Welcome, everyone. I'm Cullum Ross. I'm a chief lighting technician. I have about 25 years experience across the creative industries. So that's film, television, screen, uh, broadcast as well, theatrical. So it's quite a mix of technical craft professions, if you like, different aspects of lighting. But in the last 10 to 12 years, I've been working predominantly in what we call high-end television or HETV, as well as sort of Hollywood blockbusters, so films, episodic content, so your Netflix, Amazon Prime, and any of the other streamers. Um, so I've got a few slides to sort of show you to really explain my role within the film industry, where I sort of fit in, because we're as a production we are quite a large cohort. I suppose we are. It can be 10 people. It might be close to three or 400 people across lots of different departments. We all work collaboratively together to produce come together to produce the creative vision, if you like, of the director and cinematographer. Um, I'll skip forward. Presumably everyone can see the slides okay. Um, just a tiny bit about me. Like I said, so I've been in the industry about 25 years. I started in broadcast engineering, and then theatrical lighting design. So I went to Wimbledon School of Art. Um, I studied there and also Royal Academy, and then sort of off West End and touring as well. So that sort of taught me how to light theatrically, if you like, within a certain space or a venue. And then I sort of used that knowledge and I sort of transitioned into the single camera narrative format. So, like I said, lots of different things. Um, so, what I've tried to do here, because we're on Zoom, I've just tried to add lots of imagery, which I can talk about. I can explain where it's from and how we've gone about lighting particular production. So this is a frame from, so this is sort of behind the scenes of Bridgerton Series 3. So this was taken at, if memory serves, Osterley Park, which is a National Trust property. So this, if you haven't seen Bridgerton, it's one of Netflix probably most successful shows worldwide. It's a period drama. Um, it's a bit like a high budget soap opera, but in terms of lighting, it uses a lot of authentic locations, so real period properties like National Trust properties, and we need to do those justice as well as so we need to show off the property as it's best deserved, as well as make sure the actors are lit properly, and the backgrounds and the costumes and makeup and so on. So this is a night shoot here. So we've got a combination of just looking ahead. We've got what we call sort of LED lighting. So on the cranes there, we've got a moon box. So that's doing our moonlight across different areas of the site. And then we've got a special effects department that they're creating flame. So we've got that warm and that cool tones that will. So that's how we lit that exterior. Um, Something completely different now. We've got a corporate shoot on the left. So this is an interview. And this type of production, we used very low energy lighting. So we've got lots of what we call light mats, so very low profile LED lights. And they're color tunable, so they can be warm white or cool white or daylight or tungsten, as we refer to it. And this is a multi-camera shoot there. So we've got two different cameras, two different sizes of shot. So we might have something like this or something a bit wider. Um, and on the right there, it's a much larger production. So this is a Premier Inn commercial, which was out a few months ago, and we've lit up the it's a real location again. So we've lit up the entire size of a Premier Inn hotel in Swindon there, which is often used for the commercials. And we also got a crane there with a big light through the window. And again, we're using a lot of low energy color tunable lights. So those are a couple of examples of two very different shoots. Um, so what does a gaffer do? So firstly, the title in the past, I suppose the formal name for the title is Chief Lighting Technician or Lighting Director in some cases, or Lighting Engineer. But the sort of slang common term, certainly across Europe, is the gaffer or Chief LX in theatre. So my job is to, from the outset, is to work directly with the director of photography, so the camera person or the head camera person, and they will communicate to me how they all want a particular scene lit. And we'll look at references together. So we'll look at other films as reference points. We might look at architectural installations. We'll visit different locations, proposed locations at different times of the day, sometimes at night. If it's a stage production, we'll work directly with a production designer to look at anything from paint colors to ceiling heights, um, to set decorating to dressing. So all sorts of different aspects come together to help light a scene. But essentially, after I've had those initial conversations, I will go away and I will firstly build a team. So my team sometimes varies between one and anywhere between sort of two, and I think my team size currently is about 50 people at various different grades and specialisms within the lighting department. But so once the team is built, I'll also look at lighting equipment. I'll create lists. Again, it might be a van of equipment. It might be tens of tons of equipment and specialist access, especially on a stage or a location that you need a long distance from your power supply to where your lights are. So lots of specialist equipment is required. And then day to day on the set, my job is to, I suppose, refine that equipment. So select it per scene, per shot. And I'll also coordinate with the power supplies around the set, um, the access equipment. So this photo here is, again, this is Bridgerton, this is Bath, the Royal Crescent. Um, so we've actually got a plasma light there on a crane, um, very, very bright lights. So I will then communicate directly with those people operating those machines to create that light and to tune it, if you like, to the appropriately tune it to the scene. So yeah, that day to day. Um, so just before I go on, does anyone have any questions? Any questions about that? Or are you happy for me to sort of go on?
No, not for me. I think
Yeah,
that's
happy
good.
to. Yeah.
Continue. Yeah.
So again, just a few different examples. So this is we use lots of different types of light. Um, so traditionally, so when we were exposing film stock, so sort of traditionally films are made on celluloid film, and they still are to some extent, but a large proportion of productions these days is digital. Lots of different formats of digital camera. Um, Now, a traditional type of light we might use to expose film stock would be tungsten, so incandescent bulbs. Um, so this particular frame is from a Honda commercial about 12 years ago, and this location is this is Wembley Arena. So what we've got here is something in the order. So if you know a little bit about power, this is somewhere in the order of about 250,000 watts of light. So a huge amount of power and energy used. Um, Now, if we were to light a commercial like this today, with the technology available to us, we would probably at least uh, at least cut that in half, probably more. So in terms of energy and sustainability and color tunability, we would probably do LED, or certainly more of it. So traditionally tungsten, so that's warm white. So tungsten halogen is warm white. Now, if you know a little bit about color temperature, warm white is usually about 3000 degrees Kelvin, and very blue light would be something like 10,000 degrees Kelvin or more. Um, so when we're in cinematography terms, when we refer to cool white and warm white, we tend to refer to warm white being 3000, and on camera, daylight, if you like, is usually 5600 degrees Kelvin. Although very early in the morning, very late at night, those temperatures can vary completely. Um, so warm white tungsten, daylight cool white. So we might use something like an arc lamp, an HMI light. Um, so it's without going into too much detail, it creates a very blue light, very close to 5600 degrees daylight or warm cool white, sorry. And then we have LEDs, which can be, I suppose, can be manipulated, if you like, to create lots of different color lights, including the full color spectrum. So it can get quite complicated, but if that's the general gist of it. There's also fluorescent light as well, but we tend not to use fluorescent as much these days. So this particular shoot was almost entirely tungsten. So you've got that lovely warm wash. That's the entire arena there. Um, Lighting plans. So after I've had those conversations with the DOP, director of photography, cinematographer, and we've decided firstly what we're lighting, where we're lighting. We then start discussing lighting fixtures and quantity, and what we're trying to achieve. So in this slide here, we've got two different productions. On the left is something called Man vs. Bee, which is a Netflix show. It's a Rowan Atkinson comedy. Um, so I appreciate it's quite detailed and it's not really, it's got some pictures of this a bit coming up, but we've got lots of different lighting bars there and trussing and different symbols essentially representing different technical elements. And then on the right, this is something I do on most productions, is we'll have something like a Google Earth or a satellite image, and then we'll just simply overlay symbols where we think we will. It's like an intermediary stage, if you like, when we're choosing lights and positions. And I've got some really simple calculations on there. Position of light and how bright or what sort of exposure I'm going to get at a certain distance. And this is quite important because if I'm specifying a mobile construction crane or a very expensive access platform, it's important that you choose the right piece of equipment, especially when it has to be positioned in a particular place. Um, so yeah, this is Man versus Bee again. So this is the same lighting plan. It's a slightly different view on the left. And then on the right, we've got a sort of behind the scenes view of a stage as we're rigging it. So we actually, in that particular production, we built a mansion, if you like, complete with kitchen, custom glazing, front door, doorbell, library. Um, we even plumbed in a toilet. So in terms of it being accurate, and so when you see the show, it really is a house within a house or a house within a building. So a huge amount of detail and production design went into the production. Uh, yes, this is a photo of my team from about 4 or 5 years ago, as you can tell from the masks. But yeah, that's on that set on Man vs. Bee. So just to give you an idea of the team, without going into too much detail, on the working from left, we have our riggers. So lighting riggers, a person responsible for. I might specify the light. They might then hang the light or get them into the right position for use. And then I've got our trainees, lighting programmers, so remote control of the lighting desk, sorry, of the of lighting rig, especially when you've got hundreds and hundreds of fixtures. You need to be able to remotely control them. Um, I then got our assistant chief lighting technician, so second in department. That's also known as the best boy or best person, best girl. Um, and their role is to manage equipment, booking crew dailies, so any additional labour for a particular show, particular day or shoot or location. Um, and then I've got our wire supervisor on the far right, responsible for sort of blue screens and uh, any sort of masking, lighting masking. So all specialists in their own. So that's just an example of a standard size of a team, a lighting team. Um, so I'm sort of backtracking a little bit because I've sort of taken a few slides from different presentations, but essentially you've got the cinematographer, if you like. I've mentioned the director of photography. But in overall, you'd have your director. So the director is responsible for as I said, their creative vision. I suppose the director is the chief collaborator, if you like. It's ultimately we're all working towards that sort of cohesive vision, um, and be it lighting or like I said, or costume or story or direction of actors. The director is overall in charge of the creative, if you like. Um, so on the day-to-day of the project, you'd have a production manager or a unit production manager if it's a really big film. And their job is to manage the day-to-day costs, um, envisage any, I suppose you could say, overcome day-to-day challenges. So it's not just within the lighting department, that's also within every department. Anything from transport to special effects, visual effects, camera, sound. So their job is a project manager, if you like. Um, but they also do manage the budget, but usually just the day to day. And then overall, you would have a producer or producers, and they would be looking towards not only the production budget, but also the overall creative look. Um, and ultimately, like as I've said there, make sure that the job stays within budget, and it stays within the confines of the overall aim. So that's sort of the gist of that's sort of where the gaffer fits in, if you like. Um, so another few frames here. So we've got here. This is a Netflix show from a few years ago. This is I think Feel Good 2. So it's a theatrical setting. We've got two lighting balloons there. So these are LED balloons. So they're inflated with air and they're suspended above the stage. And that gives us very broad soft light. So it's designed to light sort of large areas in the same color temperature of light. And then slightly upstage there, we've got a sort of theatrical setting. We've got a curtain, we've got three spotlights. And this is I think if you've seen the show, this is something like episode 5 or 6. So one of the characters is a teacher, and it's a sort of a school show that doesn't quite go to plan. Um, so to this particular scene, we were somewhere. I think we're famous as a Wigmore Hall or somewhere like that in London. But yes, a real location. So drawings and plans. So sort of just coming back to that. So we might start with some photographs of a location. So on here, these are set elevations. So a couple of drawings of set elevations. And I would work with the art department, design department. They would present to me their intentions. I would then feed back to them. So in terms of any practical lighting, so any real in visions or on camera lighting that appears in camera. Um, so we work with specialists to design that. Similarly, the frame below that photo, this is from a series called Ludwig. It's a BBC comedy show. So this is one of our recce photos. So I think there we've got some. photos of a location, but we've also got our interpretation of what we think we might like lighting wise. Um, so I think we've got Robbie, our director there, and our script supervisor. And we're talking about, so Robbie's discussing the action. This is on the recce. And then we're talking about how we might go about lighting them. So there's some simple notes in there. Of course, when you actually come to lighting the on set, that might change. But it's important that you start with a plan. You have a starting point. So sort of just talking about lighting fixtures. So we refer to lights as lamps or fixtures. So this is an example of some quite large fixtures. Um, so I mean, in the days of LED and using very low powered cool lights, as in physically cold lights, tend to generate too much heat. Um, on the other end of the scale, so we have a church here on the left and I think a community centre on the right. Um, you can see in the background of that church there, it's quite an overcast, rainy day, so it's a bit like today. So for this particular setup, we wanted to sort of push a simulated daylight through the windows, through the stained glass. So on the image on the left, we have these are 18 kilowatt lights, so that's 18,000 watt light. And we've got, I think on that side, we had about six, and then six on the other side, and a specialist machine. And we would use these lights to, as I said, simulate daylight. So that cool 5,600 degrees Kelvin. And then we've got some gels on there to sort of further adjust the color temperature. So there's some pink gel on there, or rather magenta. Um, and then we've got some diffusion. So diffusion gel will soften the light. Um, and then just this graphic in the center, just to give you an example of different types of light. So at the top, we have our 18 kilowatt HMI. In the center, we have a 24 kilowatt tungsten light. So that's warm white tungsten halogen. And then at the bottom is another tungsten light. This is a beam light. So a beam light has quite a collimated sharp. So if you think Batman, that searchlight beams, that would be created with something like a beam light down below. Um, And here's a couple of examples of that on the inside, not necessarily the same building, but just to give you a gist of different looks. So the frame on the left this is another frame from Ludwig. Again, that same BBC show. And we've got three 18 kilowatt lights coming through windows there. Um, Yep, so you can see the different shadows and different angles. So, of course, one thing about where theatre differs from, say, cinematography is that with narrative productions, generally speaking, we do shoot single camera. So, in other words, if you're not seeing anything outside of that frame is not important or less important. Whereas on the stage, your frame, if you like, is the stage, and of course that stage might change. Well, staging might change. Um, so it's quite important where you choose to place your lights or not. So that frame on the left, you can see that clearly the shadows are facing in different directions, but you know for the camera's positioning and that particular day, it was sort of irrelevant that the lights were coming in at different angles. So, so on the right, we've got this is a still from a film that's not out just yet. So this is, I appreciate it's difficult to see what's going on there, but this is a set build of a Nissan hut. So this is actually on a stage. So this is on stage at Shinfield in Reading. Um, and we've got lots of sharp daylight coming through that window. Rather, we've created panels that can be removed. And because it's a set build, we can poke our lights through the top. We can have hard lights or soft lights. Or in this particular frame, we actually used reflected light. So the lights are actually on the ground, and we're using mirrors to shape the light. That's Sarah, our cinematographer, on the left on the dolly. Um, I think you can just about see. I can see some of the dressing in the background there. So that was an entirely set build. You would never know. Genuine, such a great job, production design. You'd never know it was a set. Um, just a couple of images here. This is a production called This Country. It's another BBC comedy. It's a what we call a mockumentary style. So the idea was we were following a brother and sister, or screen brother and sister, Daisy and Charlie. And so we might be shooting a kitchen or a community centre or a church. Um, the aim of the lighting for this particular production had to be quite quick. It needed to be very sort of run and gun. We couldn't have enormous trucks or anything like that, so we operated a very small team of about four of us. Um, but we might be filming in a particular location for a day or 2 or 3 days at a time. And it was important that, although a documentary, we had to maintain consistency through lighting. So, this particular scene here, we are, um, I suppose, this is a what I'd call a textile frame or a butterfly frame, and the textile is actually is opaque, so it has so no light can be transmitted through. So it's black on one side, and it's very reflective on the other side. And what we're doing there is we're creating a shadow, so we're sort of blocking the sun out, if you like, the direct sun, because it's quite a bright sunny day. And then we're using those cool white lights, so those HMIs, to create soft, ambient, consistent light by bouncing it through the windows. Um, and we would do this on almost every location. So we had to sort of come up with very innovative rigs, if you like, in order to keep that. So I think we've got some camo netting in there to hide some of the lighting stands. We've got some diffusion frames to soften the hard lights. Um, so yeah, lots of different rigs there. And another one. So again, this is if you've seen the show, this is this is Daisy and Charlie's kitchen. So that's the kitchen window on the right, and the front door there, which plays. They both play in the show. But we needed to be able to film 360 degrees from inside the kitchen. Um, so what you can't see there is, had you been inside with a camera facing outside on a very overcast, cloudy day, we had a lovely sort of consistent exposure and color temperature, and it seemed to work. So we sort of came up with this idea and went with it for three series. But no stands at particular frames, so we had to come up with a particular way of rigging. So we tied ropes. So we had a rigging specialist to tie off the textiles to the first floor into the bedroom. It had to be secured so it didn't fall down. Um, so that's just another example of location lighting. Um, this is Bridgerton. So this is a second unit scene. So we've got our carriage, horse and carriage there. Um, we used a lot of LEDs to simulate sort of paraffin lamps and candles. So there's lots of that going on. There's lots of special effects playing there. So we've got lots of simulated mist. I think this is, from memory, this is about 6 or 7 p.m. in the evening, give or take. Um, and in the background there, we've got a big cool white HMI. So that's a 9 kilowatt light on a cherry picker, so an access platform. And what we're sort of saying there is that that is our moonlight because it's a um, similar color temperature to the moon in this particular frame, and it it sort of creates this quite atmospheric feel to the opening of that particular episode. Um, and then, so we would record this over a period of nights, and then what would happen is this might top and tail an episode, or it might be used to maybe bridge a scene to set sort of time and a place and a setting. So that's what this particular shot was used for. Uh, this is Man versus Bee. So sort of jumping back to this comedy again. So this is that's Rowan Atkinson wearing a blue jacket. So this is back on our set build. This is at Bovingdon Studios near Aylesbury, and that is our library in the background. Our big doorway. So all the props, if you like, all the dressing was real. So that doorway is not polystyrene; it's a real door. The light fittings are real. The books are real. Um, we wanted to make it feel as luxurious as it appears. And of course, if you've seen the show, he actually sets about destroying the place inadvertently. So that's what's happening there. That's an entrance scene, and we're using a lot of soft light there. So that's a low profile color tunable. So that particular light can do cool white or warm white LED. Um, and it can also some of the new ones can do full color, um, but it can also be dimmed as well. So you can have it very bright or very dim, um, and it's soft. So it's a large area soft light, if you like. Um, yeah. So these are some of the examples that we might use to shape light. So we use textiles and cutters. So we use flags and diffusion frames, or some of the textiles in those earlier pictures. Those are known as cine bounces or ultra bounce. Um, on my far left, we've got a textile, so that's a stretched egg crate, and that can shutter the light. So I suppose, you can direct a soft light using an egg crate. Um, And then, so we've got our ultra bounce there, and then we've got solid flags. So these are black flags. They come in at different sizes, but ultimately, a black flag is entirely opaque, and it's designed to absorb the light and block out the light, so create shadows. And we use all of these textiles to help wrap the light in some cases, to take it away, to add it, um, to modify it, if you like. So we use a lot of this on set, and these sort of form part of our day to day, along with some of the stands that we use. Here's an example of a car commercial from a few years ago. Um, so coming back to that sort of overhead soft light. So this is a 20 by 20, so it's a 20 square foot box. We call it a box because we're sort of creating a scaffold structure, and that's suspended from chain hoists, from a roof, from steel girders. And then we've got, I suppose, a box. We refer to it as a box because we've got lots of scaffolding and a diffusion frame beneath, and we've got nine full color LED lights, soft lights there. So collectively, if you have lots of soft lights, you can create an enormous top surface, which gives you a top light, sorry, which can give you a lot of wrap, and it's much easier to hide reflections if you light from above. So if you ever next time you see a car commercial on a stage, there's a good chance it will have been lit from above, as opposed to, so if you see the car itself, you can see that all the highlights, there are no sort of ugly reflections of lights there. We tend to stay soft and quite high above the car. Um, this is an interview. This is a sort of a Discovery Channel interview from a few years ago. Um, So what we've got there is a our egg crate, so our soft light on the left there, and our egg crate to shutter that soft light to control it so it doesn't sort of spill. Um, so natively, that soft light might be something like I don't know, 180 degrees, for example. By adding this egg crate, if you like, it will shutter the light to say 90 degrees. Um, or something like that. So it will give you a very controlled soft light. And then we've got one of those flags or textiles there to cut the spill, so to prevent any of that unwanted soft light from hitting the background. So we're sort of creating shape there. And then we've got a top light there, so it's quite a soft top light, and that's sort of boomed over. And then in the background, we've got a couple of what we call sort of pops of tungsten or warm white, and that's purely to create shape and fall off on the background. So it appears to have a more of a graduated effect. So you're not just looking at a white, uninteresting wall. So that's why we might do something like that. These are a couple of examples of similar styles of lighting. So on the right, this is a Netflix documentary. I think this is one of these true crime series from a few years ago. So really similar lighting, a large soft source, octagonal. Again, that's an LED, and then a nice soft light on the background, halfway up the wall there. So that was a real location on the right. I mean, on the left, this is obviously a studio. Um, So similar approach. We've got a soft tube light for our key lights, so I suppose our most dominant light. And then in the background, we've got a slightly more angled, flatter. Uh, Again, still soft, but it's a bit further boomed around, if you like. And then surrounding the background, our backdrop, we've used colored LEDs to create the same to match the color tone as the brand colors, if you like. So I think this was a piggy bank type app from memory. So we matched the light to the brand colors. Um, so this is over at Shinfield Studios. So this is Think of England. So this is another period drama, and what we've got there is a tent, and so we never actually filmed outside of this tent on stage, but in order to achieve good sound, um, it was easier to film the tent interiors, if you like, on a stage than it was to film in Anglesey, when it's very windswept and perhaps less hospitable conditions. Um, so lots of soft lights there. This is another style of soft light, and that's just on a piece of scaffolding, and that's just lowered over the canvas of the tent. And I appreciate you can't see inside the tent there, but we've got our interiors, and they're quite tight. So inside the tent, we're using simulated paraffin lamps. Of course, it wasn't real paraffin. We had LEDs. Um, so that's what's happening there. But that's just about gives you an example of I suppose, a typical lighting setup on set. So on the far left, you've got our Nissan Hut build, and then lots of our lighting textiles. And then on standby on the right-hand side, you've got lots of flags and stands to help shape the light. And then in the foreground, you've got our director, our script supervisor, our focus puller, and then members of our art department just getting ready for the next scene. And then just a few frames here from this is Man versus Bee again. So this is the scenic backing, if you like. So we created I suppose it's something in the order of about 200 foot by 40 foot soft backing. So it's a custom photograph composite, if you like. So we sent a specialist photo team to the location, and they created, I suppose they did a super panorama, if you like. So this is something like You've heard of 2K, 4K, 8K. This is something like a 20K image uh, wide. Um, and what they've done is effectively stitched together lots of photographs to create a simulated perspective. So this perspective doesn't really exist in reality. But when we came to film this, um, so if a camera was inside the house looking out, um, we had to give the impression that it was a daytime scene in a garden. Um, so it also helps to achieve to sell the look of the setting. So this was the mansion garden, if you like. Um, I mean, in the foreground there, we've got lots of soft lights, so lights to light the area in front of the backing. So for any action taking place there, as well as anything happening upstage. So we've got what we call cyclorama lights, and they're literally just exposing the background. Um, One interesting aspect about this particular or cyclorama backing is that it can be lit from behind to give you the impression of a dusk or night shoot. There might be a frame on there. Uh, and here's another image. So this is the same studio, the same setting, just without that background there. Or rather, before the background was flown. So you can see on the far left-hand side, you've got the backlights, so the lights placed behind that scenic, and then the ones immediately where my colleague is with the blue top there, that would be the front light, if you like. Um, so a lot of lights, a lot of equipment. I think we had something in the order of something like 1 million lumens um, on just that bar, so extremely bright. Um, this is from a series called Buccaneers. So this is an Apple TV series, and this is up in Glasgow. So this is not a purpose-built studio, if you like. I think it's an old former bus garage. So we had to come up with sort of innovative rigging solutions to put our lights in. Um, but in this particular frame, we have a tent. So this is a sort of a marquee set build, if you like. Um, and then immediately above that, we have a huge softbox. Um, Except this one has, in order to sort of control the spill of the light, we've got sort of black fabric around the outsides. Um, and then, as I mentioned, lots of specialist access equipment. So we've got a cherry picker on the right with some lights on that. And on the ground, we've got some very bright LEDs as well. Um, and then on the far right, you can just about make out a blue screen. So if we're doing any chroma key, if we need to separate the background or replace the background for any particular scenes, we would do that. So I'll pause for a moment. Does anyone have any questions, any immediate questions, or happy for me to go on?
I just had a quick one about, sorry, Cameron,
Yeah, go ahead.
about the last one for the backdrop. You had the direct, yeah, you had the direct sources and then the fill lights right behind.
Hmm.
Kind of what's the reason for that with the kind of two different kind of sources so close to each other pointing in a similar direction?
So the idea with you can look this up if you're sort of interested. So this is a
Yeah.
Roscoe soft drop. So Roscoe is the brand of manufacturer.
Yeah.
So that sort of composite image, if you like, the one you see there is the daylight scene. On the back, on the reverse of this, is I suppose, a simulated dusk image. So
Mm.
it's the same photographers that went during the day also went back to photograph the house at night from the same position. So what you've got there is a sort of by lighting the background and not the front,
Mm.
I suppose the dusky colours would come through. So that's the reason for lighting behind it.
Okay. But in terms of the ones in front of it, so are they the
Mhm.
ones that you've got the China, are they China balls, these ones? Whatever they're
So
called.
these are space lights.
Oh, space lights, yeah, cool. So are these the ones in front of it rather than
That's
behind it?
right. So everything you see
Okay.
in this frame is in front, and then
Okay.
this is from the side, if you like. So the ones on the far left, those are the backlights.
Okay.
Um, and we would light the cycler from the top and the bottom on both sides.
Okay. Cool. Good.
No worries. So this is again Buccaneers. Uh, and I think finally I've got some frames on what I call specialist applications. So what we tend to do is we shoot, you might have heard virtual production or volume production mentioned. The famous example being something like The Mandalorian. Um, Now, what is volume production and what is so virtual production, if you like, is filming within, I suppose, if you like, in some cases, using game engine technology. So we're using this particular shoot, this was documentary, and we're using something called Unreal Engine, which allows us to create a virtual environment, so a built virtual environment, if you like. So think The Sims or something like that, or even a game, if you like. But we can project that, or rather display it on these enormous screens. So in The Mandalorian, for example, you might take a simulated background of, say, Tatooine, a mythical or fictional place, and give it huge amounts of resolution and detail. You can then place your camera within that space. So the camera is seeing the screen, but nothing outside of the screen. Um, and without getting too technically detailed, what you can do is you can map your real camera with, you can pair it with a virtual camera. And as you move the real camera, the perspective in your on your screen will change. Um, so you can sort of create quite quickly. It gives you access to virtual worlds, to maybe some locations in maybe quite inhospitable locations, like maybe a rim of a volcano, perhaps, or maybe deep in a jungle, so somewhere maybe inaccessible. So a lot of the recent Natural World BBC documentaries, some of the content was produced within a virtual production. So this particular one here, this is just us setting up for something called this is Titanic: The Digital Resurrection. So this is a Disney production. Um, um, a few years ago, some scientists and explorers, you might have heard of the Magellan Scan. So they sent some ROVs down to the Titanic. Um, but this time they scanned the ship. So there is now a LiDAR scan, so I suppose a laser photogrammetry type scan of the ship, in incredible amount of detail. But what this scan allowed us to do is recreate the ship in the virtual space, if you like. Um, because the screens were so large, we were able to put our real and virtual cameras in that space and pan around and fly over, and in some cases go in through portholes and things. But gave you the impression that you were on the seabed, when in fact, obviously we're nowhere near it. So we used a lot of sort of virtual lighting technologies to achieve that. So on the right, we've got our my programmer, programmer Ziggy, and she's sort of manipulating the lighting around the model, which you can just about see in the background there. Um, yeah, so lots of animators, lots of game engine specialists, lots of virtual production techniques used there to achieve that. So that's an entirely stage production. Um, yeah, I think that's it. So I suppose happy to take as many questions as you can fire at me.